And welcome to the breakout sessions for Mobile and IoT Summit. This is a session for Dell Boomi, and today we have a great interactive session in store for you as Dell Boomi has brought with them a terrific partner in IoT. The name of the session, Achieving Business Outcome from IoT. We'll be hearing from CTO of Boomi, Michael Morton, and one of Dell Boomi's great partners in IoT, Mike Veldhuis, Director of Sales and Marketing at Nalta, a company based in the Netherlands. Gentlemen, welcome to the Mobile and IoT Summit.
Thank you. Hi, Vance.
Thank you, Vance.
We're glad to have Michael and Mike with us this morning. Michael, as the CTO of Dell Boomi, has invention in his genes. In fact, he's now responsible for driving Boomi's technical strategy and direction to meet the needs of customers and partners, especially in the world of IoT. And prior to this post, he was a distinguished engineer at Dell, where he focused a lot on both software and hardware expertise, which certainly comes into play with IoT. And prior to that, he was the chief architect at IBM for Tivoli Discovery, for some of you that may remember the Tivoli days where they were directly into analysis and tracking of all sorts of enterprise discovery solutions. And for his part, Mike Veldhuis, Director of Sales and Marketing at Nalta, is a practically minded creative problem solver, which comes in very handy when it comes to IoT problem sets and delivering designs. He is not one to blindly embrace the latest hype or trend, as you'll hear. He's got some terrific hands-on experience in how to deliver IoT success, but also how to avoid IoT roadblocks. And so with the help of Michael and Mike, we're going to go through a very interactive session that takes a look at some of what we think are going to be the high pain points in your decision-making around IoT. This is a unique format. We're going to have a Q&A format where we've gotten some of the top-of-mind questions from customers at Dell and the hands-on experience from Nalta to give you somewhat of a customer journey guide into how folks are implementing and thinking about IoT from the highest level all the way down to in the trenches to getting some real business outcomes. So with that, let's begin our Q&A with our speakers, Michael Morton, CTO of Boomi, and Mike Veldhuis of Nalta. You know, the first question here, I think a lot of folks would like to get some insight into not only what vendors and service partners think, but also what customers think. Give us a definition of what IoT is to you as you look across the landscape of the marketplace right now.
I'll tell you what, for such a short question, it is actually a very interesting question in the respect that you can ask anybody the definition of IoT, and you'll always get a different answer. I will tell you that the predominant answer is it's always based on who is the person, what's their role. But there's this natural inclination to immediately start talking about sensors and hardware because people seem to gravitate towards the tangible first. But through many discussions, ultimately by listening to people, working with Nalta and Mike, many people, other people in the industry, you start realizing that you have to shape the discussion and move the discussion away from a hardware-centric definition to a business outcome-centric answer. So this took time, by the way. This does not come overnight. So it took time to refine the equally short definition to me of what is IoT. And that short definition is simply this. IoT is about achieving a business outcome from device data. So if you really think about it, yes, you need to achieve some outcome, but that outcome always starts with the device data. Yes, it starts with the device. Everybody knows that. But really, if you think about it, the end result is you're utilizing a piece of hardware producing data and you're doing something with it. And ultimately what you're doing with it is you're achieving some business outcome. So again, this took time, by the way. Nothing really is instantaneous as realizing IoT is really about achieving a business outcome from device data. That is my view of the world is of how I arrived at the definition of IoT. Mike?
IT always has something to do with acronyms. We find acronyms for everything. So, and I'm in IT not as long as you, Michael, but long enough that from a personal perspective, IoT really brings joy back to what we're doing, because we're actually talking with the business and translating those business needs to great IoT or IT solutions. But that's not really a definition. Drilling more into that is, you could look at IoT as a way to bring sensory perception to the internet. So we connected computers through networks to people, and now we're adding sensor data to this network. And these sensors are not only dumb sensors like a temperature sensor, but really smart sensors as well, like platforms or people or processes, AI, robots, transactions. So this mash up all this sensory data and data in general creates a very powerful way of moving IT into the business direction.
You know, it's a really great high-level vision you guys have. Let me just kind of throw in a little extra dimension here. The answer talks a lot about folks that are lucky enough to have sensors or device-driven data at the edge, but I think a lot of our attendees may not even have that. Is there an element of how I data enable my devices that also goes into this question?
That's a really good question, Vance. So there are so many stages to IoT. There are companies that will say, we've been doing IoT for decades. And quite frankly, they already have out of necessity. I call it sort of like old generation IoT, or let's say old generation censored machine to machine, which has been going on for decades. And IoT is just a new term for the same concept. It's just the fact that we have new technology. So you have these worlds where in some industries, they're already enabled to some degree, but now they need to generate new business value from what they already have. And then you have the world that is now trying to figure out how to introduce new modern devices and hardware in order to elevate their company and execute on an IoT strategy. And the market is absolutely flooded and going crazy with sensorizing everything from bicycles to mailboxes, to, obviously we know cars, but it's just unbelievable how the industry is now trying to be very innovative to add sensors to almost everything that a human touches at this point. So to answer your question is actually very challenging, because you have to figure out who you're going to go to depending on what is the environment. Is it manufacturing? Is it a construction site? Because now you have to think about equipment for adverse conditions and on and on. And quite frankly, it is a very challenging thing for customers right now of where to go. But the beautiful thing about innovation is it breeds entrepreneurship, and there are companies springing up all over the place that are focusing to provide adding sensors to legacy things, legacy equipment, and then companies that are basically, building built-in equipment, things, appliances that already have sensors. So it's sort of a roundabout way of saying, I don't have the answer for you. I just basically see like the evolution of the market. And it is a challenge for businesses to understand where to start and how to get started with technologies for which they're currently not enabled with sensors and device data.
But probably, Michael, they are in luck because they don't have the sensors yet. Because a lot of IoT projects fail because they do. We've got all this data. We got all these sensors. We have to do IoT, and they don't start with the business case. And these companies that don't have the sensors and don't have the data, but they feel they have the need to have this business case, they have a real question, a real challenge, they will find the sensors they need. That's not the problem. The problem is the true business case.
Yep. Very true, Mike. I thought you were going down the path of it's almost a luxury for companies that currently don't have sensors because
exactly.
Yep, that they'll start off on the right foot, probably an extensible or a longer rate of return on their initial investment versus trying to adapt to what they already have. So yeah, that's a very good perspective as well.
Not just doing IT because you can.
This is really kicking off to be a great beginning, because the idea that there is the folks that have sensor devices, or they're kind of IoT ready, or maybe they've even been playing in that sort of data delivery from the edge world for so many years, that they may be at a disadvantage as opposed to folks that are greenfield. This is a very interesting kind of kickoff theme here. You know, speaking of adoption patterns, what are you seeing, and I'll leave this open to either one of you, as particular industry adoption trends at the moment, especially some that I know were early days that could be turned into patterns that other folks could adopt or at least learn from?
There are actually a lot of industry adoption trends, and there is a lot of happening currently. I attend a lot of events, and over the past 1 or 2 years, IoT was a topic, high-level topic. For instance, I was at Dell Technology World, and you actually see that there's not only a topic or a marketing quote, they are really strategically focused on delivering IoT solutions. I think that's a big change over the past year, talking about digital transformation and actually having the products for it, like Dell Boomi, and executing on it. Drilling a little bit deeper in the industry adoption trends, we see a lot of standardization of products or protocols. I think Boomi is a great example of that, of a product that really enables your IoT strategy. But MQTT is a great example of a protocol for streaming data. What we really enjoy and like is platform-oriented designs. We'll drill into that a little bit further in this discussion, but we think that's really important. And it's moving away from feeling like IoT is a solution for predictive maintenance. A lot of the projects that have been started are focusing on that. And there is so much more to IoT than predictive maintenance. And another problem is that a lot of projects started as a proof of concept and never got into the production stage. Currently, we are working on that's a beautiful business case with Digital Angel. We started 12 months ago together with the team of Michael, with Boomi and our team, building this IoT platform for the healthcare industry in the Netherlands and even abroad. And what this platform actually does is we created this platform where you can add sensor data to, and the outcomes and insights of this platform data are being presented to the health industry or healthcare homes. The first sensor we connected is a smart mattress, and we really drilled down to a very basic setup where we actually only measuring whether a patient is in or out bed and the position the patient has in the bed. But the added value we give to the end user is enormous, because we're really solving a health problem here with people we are having bed sore, that you have this patient that's lying in the bed on his back and has to be turned every 3 hours. And we actually monitor whether a patient has done it himself. So a nurse doesn't have to go to the bed, turn the patient, wake him up, because he's done it himself. So we're improving health care and we're lowering costs. And that's totally different than just focusing on predictive maintenance.
So to key off of what Mike was just saying in regards to Dell Boomi being an integration platform. So in the industry, Dell Boomi is recognized as integration platform as a service. So we're all about integrating cloud applications to cloud applications, on-premise applications to on-premise, and all combinations in between. So when it came to watching the industry evolve around IoT, and then hooking up with Mike and Nalta, the realization that it is necessary to have an integration platform that has a very broad and wide scope of being able to connect to many different applications in order to interchange data. So where you have in the IoT industry, the vendors that specialize in the devices, the device-enabled equipment that's producing the data, You now, of course, have to capitalize on that data, aka what we're referring to as the business outcome from that device data. But ultimately, you need to now integrate and produce that business outcome. And how, in this case, with Nalta, first they defined a platform strategy, as Mike mentioned. And that platform strategy incorporates Boomi, which means that Boomi is used to integrate, allocate, access the data that was produced by the medical equipment, mattresses, whatever, censored. And now it has to build that bridge of that data, putting that data, the right data, in the hands of the people that actually have to take action. So there's a couple things that is very key what Mike said. First of all, you need a platform that can intercept an action that needs to be performed. In this case, the action would be someone in a smart mattress is potentially in duress, or there's some situation that's happening. That's the action, right? You need to do something. But the business outcome is actually taking that information, the device information, and putting it in the hands of the right person that can physically go there and manipulate, perform an activity with the client that is in the bed or needs to have some other type of medical attention. And the interesting thing is where Boomi sits is actually taking that raw data that got produced and being that integration bridge to move the data necessary into an interface that a person then actually reacts to and accomplishes their mission. In this case, the outcome is they physically addressed the problem with the client that was recognized as having a level of duress. So this is where Boomi comes into play, is it actually is providing that bridge from the data to a person that actually is taking action to resolve a problem.
This is fantastic because we've actually used this example of Digital Angel to, I think, paint a much bigger picture of what's going on here. And it kind of turns to another question point here that maybe we can explore. So if I understood the first few minutes of our call, we've got the following pillars in place. We've got growing standards that are acceptable. We've got a platform, or at least platform designs we could begin to think about. We've got a whole array of integration to get data from the edge to where it might need to be, whether it's a console or another app or another triggering event. And then we've got all the sensorization that you guys spoke about at the very beginning. With all these pieces, it seems like the recipe is in place for all sorts of things to be happening. One, would you agree with that? And if there isn't enough happening, what do you think are some of the biggest inhibitors to business getting value from IoT, especially given we hear so many stories of these IoT projects kind of laying dormant?
Oh, here's the question. Mike and I always race to be the first one because we have the same answer. The same answer.
Yeah,
all right.
I do have an answer. Exactly right, Vance. It really drills down into one of the major inhibitors we see in adopting IoT is that there is a lack of platform perspective. So when we look at this typical case of Digital Angel, it's not the power that we can connect a smart mattress and give the business insights to a nurse or the nurse is her manager, but it's the fact that we build a platform that is scalable and capable of handling more sensors. So a lot of the projects we see are siloed solutions. We got a sensor, we got not a platform, but something in the cloud that actually delivers the insights of that particular sensor. But the true power of IoT is the platform strategy where we combine the outcomes and the data of multiple sensors and produce insights that are far more advanced. I think that's a very big lesson, an inhibitor to realizing value from IoT.
I have a different perspective around some of the biggest inhibitors, okay? And one of the biggest inhibitors is people. And you think to yourself, what in the world do you mean? And I don't mean it in a negative way. So I'll do my best to describe. This plays off of a bit about what Mike said. It has to do with vision. It has to do with the way people think. But I'll add a little twist to what I mean. IoT is really causing a very interesting shift. Now, this is a bit of a departure probably from what people might expect for the way I'm going to answer this, but sure. I not only serve as the role of CTO, but I watch the industry in other ways. I watch what are the roles that companies are hiring people, especially around IoT. I look at the job description. It's very interesting that you can go to the depth of watching IT and technology evolve, but the way that I watch companies evolve around IoT is to see who they're hiring. And when I mean people, this is a new role. I think of it as, let's say, analogous to what we might in our heads think about as the purpose of a data scientist. But instead, I would say that it's a new brain data skill set, that you are seeing a shift where people that have the ability to transform what is possible with device data into the desired business outcome is an art and a skill that equally is evolving. Now, I can't lay claim to coming up with the name of this role because this phrase that I'll say has been used in industry, but it's not just the data scientist, and I'm not going to go into defining a data scientist so we don't offend anybody, but we're seeing this transition of achieving the desired business outcome from the combination of integrating device data, business data, and people, that the new role that I see emerging is a business scientist. So if you think about that for just a second, a data scientist is a very technical phrase. A business scientist has the ability to apply the science of integration to the business. And so I would say that for me personally, I would like to see the evolution in the use of the frame a business scientist for IoT, because that's where I think I see the companies, businesses trying to figure out who do they need to hire in order to help you on their IoT strategy. So back to my original answer of some of the biggest inhibitors is really the people that can think this way.
I love it. Actually, very, very cool. And do you envision that in 10 years, this will be a study at universities and schools?
I have to say yes. I mean, if you think about this, think about the scale of what is attached today, right? I will tell you that this is an unsubstantiated claim to answer the question a little bit more succinctly. So people think. I like to get people to think a little bit differently. Mm-hmm. There was a study, again, I can't substantiate this, but there was more vehicles that were connected to the U.S. cellular networks than there were cell phones.
Yeah.
Just think about that. More cars. Can you imagine the amount of data that's getting produced by vehicles on a U.S. cellular network versus a phone? Mm-hmm. Who in the world has the skill to actually allow car manufacturers to translate data coming off of cars into a business outcome? It could be anything. It could be guiding them to their nearest service center if they're traveling and the car is detecting a problem. It could be anything. But indeed, Mike, I think that you will increasingly see much more specialized skill of looking for people to help businesses translate all this device data into business outcomes, unquestionably, and universities, you name it.
What I really like about it is that now it seems to be tied to the entrepreneurial space. You have to be an entrepreneur to see the value of your data or your sensors or whatever to create a great IT solution. And what you're saying is that you can actually teach people to think that way. And it's not entrepreneurial anymore. It's a business.
Yep. I basically say, I made a bold statement recently that said, within 2 years, almost every single business will be producing and or consuming device data, which means they could be consuming it from another business, another partner. But just think about that simple phrase. Within the next 2 years, I would say that maybe it's contentious. 90% of every single business that has an IT department will be producing or consuming device data.
Yeah.
Don't know if anybody's ever said that or thought about that, but that is exactly what's going to happen.
You know, this is really terrific, Michael and Mike. Hearing you talk back and forth about the inhibitors and now pivoting to enablement, I think it's been really exciting just the last 4 or 5 minutes. But to get the creative juices flowing, I just know from experience that some people are kind of thinking, okay, well, how do I find my own Elon Musk to work on IoT? I mean, there are just so few people that are that kind of skill to be the business scientist. To get the ball rolling, can each of you maybe share one of these out-of-the-box crazy ideas that you've heard from clients that are actually implementing it for business outcomes for IoT?
So let me give you just a little bit different perspective on that question, just to be thought-provoking. Because people listening to this, some of them may be very tied to their industry and some may be listening for interest. So let me give you a consumer perspective on a question when I think about a crazy idea. That is, what is the definition of IoT to me? Humorously, sometimes I look at it as a dating service, right? If I say, well, IoT is it's a dating service. But in actuality, what I really mean is it is about relationships and the possibility of IoT and what it means to relationships. I'll give you a quick whimsical example of this. I walked into my local Lowe's home improvement store just a few short weeks ago, and once where the floor space was occupied by seasonal products is now a huge display of home automation products. So that tells me many things. I can envision that a corporate meeting took place and said, well, okay, we feel it's more profitable that the consumer market wants all these attached digital things. Okay, I see that first, but that quickly leaves my mind. I immediately go into, okay, if my neighbors are installing all these devices in their home, what opportunity does that open up? What does technology make possible? So, Mike, I'll ask you a really quick question. Let's say that your neighbor has a security alarm and a smoke alarm that's network attached. If your neighbor's security alarm or smoke alarm was going off, your immediate neighbor, would you want to be notified?
Absolutely.
Exactly. So think about the possibilities of so many connected devices and the opportunities that if even in a residential neighborhood, they have all these devices, the power and the value of me wanting to know, is my home protected if my neighbor's home is experiencing a security alarm or smoke alarm, either to help my neighbor or to ensure that my property's intact, and I'm not having any further duress. So when I think about and walk into this Lowe's home improvement, I quickly go from, hey, great business model, you're selling more products, to the possibilities of those relationships. We never really think about the relationship part of IoT. I just defined a new form of relationship with my neighbors that benefits me. It actually may cause the business outcome could be an additional decrease in my homeowner's insurance because we are a community of devices, and on and on and on. So when I think about IoT, my brain immediately races down the new relationships that can form and the new business value and business outcomes that result from this.
Yeah, but at the same time, when the question is the possibilities of IoT and we answer that question, we are living up to the hype. And sometimes me and our team just say to our customers, look at your data, the data you already got, the data that sensors are producing. Look at this data as a data analyst and find out where the gold is. And after that stage, look to a great IoT possibility you can create.
Yep, you need a business scientist.
We do.
Fantastic. This has really been a great session, a great conversation. I see we're kind of coming close on time, but before we close, let's really kind of make this as actionable as we can for our attendees. For companies that are inspired or they're just starting an IoT project, or maybe they've even begun one and feel like they might be on the wrong road or perhaps more modest a road than they should be. Can you help folks take some of their thinking, their ideas, and get them down on paper before their brain explodes?
We can, and we do. And actually, along the way, we developed a framework, a strategy to actually help our customers with this challenge. We call it the Digital Vision Workshop. And actually, what changed is that we're not talking with IT people. Well, sometimes we do, but most of the time we're talking with a business, with a marketing manager, the CEO, the owner of the company, the finance officer. And you really have to assist and help those people to translate their ideas into a framework. And that's what we do with the Digital Vision Workshop. So we actually listen for 2 or more hours, go into the company, look how they are organized, what products they make, what their business models are, and translate that into this framework. And that is really helpful because we plot their data sources, we plot their current applications, we actually tell the story of integration with Boomi to create an added value platform, which is the basis of an IoT project.
And here's the irony. So Mike and his company are producing an IoT platform on top of a platform. Boomi is an integration platform. So we're the plumbing, right? And Mike is building the value for customers on top of the plumbing. So for us in Boomi, we generally have the opposite end of the direction. We usually end up talking to someone who is more technical. However, because we end up talking to somebody more technical, we have to steer the conversation of helping them define what it is that they're trying to achieve. So we try to back off from the technology discussion to get to the desired business outcome. And so the recommendation is set aside the technology for just a moment and refocus on what it is you're trying to achieve. Is it an avoid loss of productivity situation? Is it an increase of productivity? Is it a quality of living? Is it increased competitiveness? So you need to start incorporating the discussion, especially at the IT level, because the IT person will also be responsible for convincing their business that it is worth investing in the way that they're going to communicate, and the way that we want to have the conversation first is, what is the business outcome that you're trying to achieve? So how to get started, first recommendation, just think about what it is in a very simple way that you're trying to achieve. Then start building your technology strategy.
This is just so valuable. Just one kind of parsing of this great advice. I think a lot of folks here on this call, and certainly folks that I run into a lot that are beginning their first IoT project, it's just so easy to stop when they think, okay, let me just sensorize something at the edge, whether it's a windmill or a device or something that might end up triggering a console, or maybe it's predictive maintenance, but maybe it's some other sort of console. And that's good enough. It's a pilot project. They want to get going. What's your advice to folks that have a project like that, either in their pocket or in their pipeline, that think that's the way it is to go, and then they go shop for their menu of vendors or components they need? I think a lot of people do it that way. Is that okay until you get your running speed, or should really people do something a bit different at the very beginning?
I'll go back to my same answer. It is, before you go shopping for a bucket of bolts, you'll end up with a bucket of bolts if you don't know what you're shopping for. I mean, I know this sounds very cliche, but you need to sit down first and define what are your business objectives and business outcomes. Because if you try to buy the bucket of bolts first, you will not be successful. You just won't be. You've got to understand what it is that you're trying to achieve.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. And at the same time, keep that passion for IoT. And see it as a startup. You got limited funding. You got a great idea. You got a lot of assets. build your first MVP and go ahead. But don't forget the business outcome. But keep the passion flowing.
Fantastic, fantastic. You know, guys, with that, I see time has just about expired. But before you go, I think, Michael, I know that your team has gathered a lot of great get-started resources. Give us a sense of how folks can take advantage of those and otherwise get started down the IoT path for business outcomes with Dell Boomi.
Yeah, sure, Vince. So everybody can go to boomi.com. There is IoT information off of our website, including the information about the success of the solution and the relationship between us and Nalta, as well as the fact that you can even frictionlessly sign up and get a free trial to try out Boomi for yourself. So go ahead and do that, and hopefully you'll find that it meets your needs. And I wish everybody good luck and happy trails on your IoT strategy.
Fantastic, fantastic. Michael Morton, CTO of Dell Boomi, and Mike Veldhuis, Director of Sales and Marketing at Nalta. A really great and high-energy conversation. I think it really opened some eyes, talking about the conventional wisdom as well as kind of peering into some unconventional, really valuable insights. So thank you both very much.
Thanks, Vance, and good chatting with you, Mike.
Yeah, thank you. It was great.
And as we love to do here at the Mobile and IoT Summit, yes, Michael's group at Dell has really provided us some great assets. I really recommend you take a look at them, including that free trial to the Atomsphere platform, talking about the valuable asset that a platform provides to IoT. That's going to be available to you as a free trial right through this link. And we have some other resources there available on this slide. And when you download the slides, you will get a copy of all the questions and the summaries of the answers, as well as the links on this slide will be live. Thanks again, everyone.